Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's RMIT conversation, in which we'll be focused on why creativity and a creative approach in the workplace and a good imagination is increasingly valuable in the world of work. My name is Liam Freeman, and I'm the Associate Director for the Creative Industries Cluster of Vocational Education Programs in the new College of Vocational Education here at RMIT University. But before we get underway, I'd just like to acknowledge the people of the Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nations, on whose unceded lands we conduct the business of the university. RMIT respectfully acknowledges their ancestors and elders past, present and emerging. And while we conduct our work remotely, I would also like to pay my respects to our First Nations peoples across the wider unceded lands of Australia. So, in a recent LinkedIn study that was conducted to gain insights into the world of work, it was found that 57% of senior leaders from companies across the globe were saying soft skills were more important than hard or technical skills, and that the number of soft skills that the number one soft skill that they were looking for in potential employees was that of creativity. So the key question here for us to explore today in our conversation is why a creative approach and a good imagination is increasingly valuable and important in the world of work. And so in order to explore this question and explore others relating to the importance of creativity, I've gathered together some of the wonderful teachers and leaders who I work with here every day in the College of Vocational Education at RMIT University. So I'm very pleased to be joined by Katrina Rose, our Program Manager for our Fashion and Textiles, Fashion Styling and Footwear programs, among others, at our Brunswick campus, RMIT's Brunswick campus. Also, John Reeves joins us, who looks after our professional writing and editing and professional screenwriting programs based at RMIT's City campus. And thirdly, we have Rowan Humphrey, who is a teacher and program coordinator within the screen and media programs, with a particular focus on television studio production, live production and technical services at RMIT University. Before we get underway with the conversation, I just would like to let you all know we will have 15 or 20 minutes at the end of our panel discussion to go over any questions that we have coming in from our audience tonight. You can submit questions in the Q&A tool on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll do our very best to answer as many as we possibly can if we run out of time. Please remember our live chat is currently open and can be joined at any time. So, Katrina, if I might come to you first with the first consideration of our question. Katrina, as an educator in fashion and textiles for more than 10 years, also noting that you have worked in the fashion industry for over 20 years, which is a very long time and much experience, how do you respond to the finding that creativity is a number one in-demand skill in the workplace? And what do you think these company CEOs and business leaders mean by creativity?
Thanks, Liam. It's a really interesting question. I think I'd first like to have a talk about, what is creativity itself? Is creativity just about designing something new or innovative, or is it about actually doing, so making something that you have designed? Or really, is creativity also about bringing creative solutions to a real problem? And I think that that's where it links into what CEOs and business leaders, certainly in my industry of fashion and textiles, are really looking for. Creativity is not one-dimensional, in my opinion. It goes into everything we do and everything we can bring into a job role. if we look across the programs that we offer in the creative cluster, so whether it's footwear design or fashion and textile styling or merchandising, so the business end of fashion, or graphic design, which isn't part of my area but is aligned with the creative clusters, furniture design, interior design, photography, visual arts, they all demand a level of creativity, but it's something that a student brings into the study place, and we build on or help them build on their own innate creativity and open up different possibilities for them. And more I see students going from vocational education into the workforce, and what they bring to that job or to that industry business is something that is an inquiring mind and an openness to try something different. Sometimes that also means an ability to try something and fail, but then come back and try again. I think that that's something that creative minds and creative people are really good at. They're great at being able to see a possibility, try something, and then have another alternative behind the scenes as well, because not everything works in business. We all know that. If we look at my industry across fashion and textiles, particularly, COVID in the last 18 months, it has gone through the industry and hit it really hard, as it has with many creative industries. We all acknowledge that. And for my industry, business leaders are looking for creative outcomes and creative solutions at every single point. So whether it is creatively looking at the financials, or creatively looking at the supply chain, or creatively looking at how we produce product sustainably, or from different sectors of the industry, it's all centered around creativity. And I honestly think that's what we do really well at RMIT. That's what we foster within our students and set them up so that they can be ready to go into a workforce that will then nourish them and encourage them to go further.
Thank you, Katrina. Yes, it is an interesting reflection to consider how, our responses, our collective responses to COVID-19, I suppose, in an educational environment, but also the way this has forced change and forced us to operate in different ways in industry, and the way industry operates is certainly an element you could describe as forced creativity and problem solving, certainly. And coming to you, John, in terms of your extensive background in screenwriting, script writing, I imagine, having worked on set during the creation of some of Australia's most successful drama series, such as Bed of Roses and The Saddle Club, that you would be surrounded by storytellers, actors, and of course, writers, directors, and camera and production crew, people with an exceptional level of creativity and a strong vision. What would you say, John, after working in these environments for so many years, what can you tell me about the importance of creativity in those workplaces?
Liam, creativity doesn't necessarily mean being a show-off and having sparkling ideas and putting it out there. A lot of the people you've mentioned, the grips that do the fetching and carrying on set, the behind-the-scenes people, in my case, the script editors and the writers, they are simply just as creative, and that's their stock in trade, to come up with solutions to problems in a way that gets the job done. Script editors particularly, which we focus on in the professional writing and the screenwriting area, it's important that they have stamina. Their creativity is often, they're asked to be creative at the end of a 9-hour day. They've been sitting around a plotting table with 8 other people. Ideas aren't flowing and stories not getting fixed, and they have to come in and come up with a way to make it work. Often the idea that makes it work at 6 o'clock at night isn't all that good. We all kid ourselves. It's terrific. And then we come back the next morning and go, no, forget all that. We'll do something else. But the other thing too for editors in both the book publishing and screenwriting industry is that their creative bent isn't going to be on the title page. They're going to be behind the scenes. And I know this applies in a lot of cases to the other people in the creative industries area. They need to be the instigator. Often they'll commission the work. They'll be the ones making the call. Let's get this work made. They'll be the shrink that works with someone who isn't quite sure of themselves and needs some guidance, needs some mentorship, just needs a tap on the shoulder when things aren't quite working and a shoulder to cry on when they turn bad. And they also, in the end, have to be a fixer. They have to come in and save a situation. And as Katrina said, often things aren't totally rosy out there in the industry. Things do turn bad, or everyone's got ashes in the mouth about how things are going, and we particularly feel that at the moment. And again, the creative person is able to find a way to make that work.
Thanks, John. Yeah, you can certainly see how those sorts of attributes that people bring in, those sorts of attributes, and I suppose that work ethic that you speak of into their workplace, whether it's a creative discipline or in your case script writing and screenwriting or otherwise, would be highly valued by employers.
One of the exciting things, Liam, in Building 94, which is where we're headquartered in Cardigan Street in the city, that's our creative industries hub. A lot of our programs collaborate with each other. So we will have editors in the associate degree of PWE, Professional Writing and Editing, working with photography students in the visual arts area, and they will be editing their photo books and they'll be publishing things together. And it's just a great experience that replicates what happens out there in industry. So for 2 years, they immerse themselves in simulations in a way of what they're going to be doing once they get a job.
Yeah, so I suppose what you're alluding to there, John, is the way people work together creatively and work, cross discipline, which is really the way industry does work. You're not working in isolation. You're working collaboratively and in partnership with others, and having creativity expressed in those environments is really important.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. And just coming to Rowan for a moment. So, Rowan, you started your journey at RMIT about 26 years ago. So, congratulations on your contribution over that period of time. And your area of expertise is in screen and media, and particularly areas such as TV production, light production, and technical services. So, I'm sure the question of creativity and these questions that we're considering now, you would have some perspectives on, and also the question of collaboration and creativity within collaboration. So what are your reflections? What are your thoughts here?
Thanks, Liam. Hello, and hello, viewers. Good to be with you all, and I hope I can speak on behalf of some similar disciplines. So certainly television, our film and television area, and our live production and technical services and sound production areas have similar discipline experiences, and the industries that our graduates find their way into, I think have a fairly common understanding of what they're looking for, and they're particularly looking for people to act creatively in what is an increasingly technical role. I think you could possibly make that comparison for all of the disciplines that we'll talk about tonight, that what sits behind a particularly creative story or an engaging drawing or a sculpture is always technical skill, craft skill, and craft skills and technical skills are built over time. And sometimes people who don't have initially a creative bent or an understanding of being what we might assume to be creative actually develop that over time. And I think it's important, as Katrina pointed out earlier on, there's dimensions of creativity. So there's certainly, whilst you might not be creating a product, you might be designing solutions that solve technical problems and thinking creatively in order to do that. You might be acting creatively in the performance of your role, and I'd certainly want to come back to John mentioned the role of the grip, and I think at some point we might talk about what a grip actually does, and I would like to talk from my experience of just watching grips at work, and I would liken them to watching ballet. It's certainly the dance of the grip that comes to mind, but I might come back to that. I think all of those things combine to involve what our impact on the story is going to be. So I might be in a technical role and not see myself as one of the creatives that's going to appear to the public, but what is my impact on the story? What's my impact on the performance of that dancer? What's my impact on the story that's evolving on the television screen, albeit that my role is fundamentally a technical one? And I think all of the employers are looking for our graduates to have either developed through experience in their time at RMIT some of those creative understandings, or through direct attempts at teaching creativity. And I think that might raise an interesting question later on. Is it possible for us to approach the realms of creativity directly, or are there other ways that we can really foster those innate creative ambitions that we all hold?
Thanks, Rowan. And just you raised some really interesting points here, and particularly as we reflect on the foundations of the technical skills as they enable and give our students ways into creative expression. I'm just wondering, Katrina, if you're reflecting on in your area in fashion textiles, so those kinds of technical skills that are really important in vocational education. That is central to our training, and how they provide a really important foundation for creative expression, I suppose. If you're a musician, you need to practice an instrument, and to be creative as a musician, you need to have a mastery over your discipline. So how would you describe that playing out in your particular area?
I think anyone who's listening who wears clothes, as we all do, knows that you want it to fit. So that's your skill. You talk to a really great pattern maker, and it's like it's doing a 3D puzzle. And when I look at what some of our students are working on in that area, and the skill around creating something in 2 dimensions, so from an idea, from a thought, from research, in a product design, so clothing design, and then turning it into something that's 3-dimensional. I think talking to people that are really good at pattern making, it's they have a skill that is, when they look at something that is 2-dimensional on a piece of paper, they see it in 3 dimensions. It's just something that they innately understand and can do. And looking at what our students are working on at the moment, where they're doing patterns that then from a piece of cloth has maybe 3 or 2% wastage, which is pretty extraordinary. And I think that those sort of creative skills are potentially the survival of our industry and the way of the future.
And John, what about you in terms of those? How would you describe the technical skills of writing, and in your case, script writing, and a reflection on how those need to be built through training, through education, and how that allows students to realise their creative ambitions in a script writing sense?
Look, this does come back to that age-old question, can creativity be taught? The answer to that is maybe. What we try to do is immerse the writer and the editor for 2 years in just doing nothing but their craft, learning their craft. And that's a fantastic, reward, if you like, for everyone to be able to do that, to tell people, I'm actually studying this program, I'm writing, I'm editing, I'm doing what I had promised you I would one day do, and I'm going to get very good at it, and I'm going to get through. So for those 2 years, they can totally immerse themselves in the work they love to do. And the second thing is, I guess, when it comes to how we try to teach it, we try to get students good at taking feedback. It's so important both in the educational world and out in the industry that you're able to take notes. You're able to listen to people's input, no matter how, unpopular, unpleasant it might seem to you at the time, but you have to find a way, whether you ignore them or whether you tell them how wonderful their input is and then find another way to do it. You've got to be able to take notes, make things stronger through working with other people. The third thing for any writer and any editor is redrafting. You've just got to have the skill to take something you've done at a first draft, and I'm sure this applies across the board. Take something that is in an embryonic stage, accept that's my first draft, and then move on. There's a saying in screenwriting, a vomit draft, where people just jump in and they write whatever comes to mind and hurl it onto the page and then move on to the next stage. I think in some ways we try to go beyond that. We try to have students think about what they're doing so that their first draft is, it's still a strong, passionate piece of work, but it's a little bit more considered because of their craft skills. And then they can go on and redraft, as I said, take the notes, take the feedback, and make it stronger and better. So that's pretty much our approach. I think the success is there. We have some fabulous graduates who've, had theatrical features released, who have written for television series just recently, and certainly in the publishing area, the associate degree has a fabulous track record of, work being published, whether it's Kate Mildenhall, Tony Jordan, Sophie Laguna, and of course Graham Simpson, who wrote the Rosie trilogy. So always happy to provide references if required.
Thanks, John. And yeah, I was just thinking also about what you might call the third participant in this this dance of creativity, which should be you've got the teacher, the student, but also the facilities that are available for those students to work within and get a handle on and grasp and master. So Ryan, I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit about the kind of facilities that we have available at RMIT, and also the way. Also, just coming back to the question of collaboration and how different program areas would interact within a facility with creative outcomes.
I think anybody coming into our environment in the media precinct on Swanston Street will first be overwhelmed by the enormity of the technical facility there, and certainly a young student coming in for the first day will look around at a lot of moving images and screens and buttons, and so it's a fully functioning suite of television studios, not just one studio, but a number. Keeping this conversation threaded around creativity, I think when you see the technical material presented to you, you could be overwhelmed. And I think one of the first things that we try to do is to say that from a technical point of view, there's always going to be a solution come through exercising your skills slowly and developing them, and you will, by virtue of starting at the bottom and practicing and working up, you will develop some creative understanding of how you might operate in a role. In order to do much with all of that technology, we need stories to tell. We're a television studio. So the collaborations that occur in our television studios with our writers, so the students that John is talking about who are writing screenplays we have an annual collaboration with them where the students get to interact in a way that wouldn't normally occur until perhaps later in their life experience. So a fresh script has been written and redrafted, so a really quite well-rounded piece of work is being presented into a highly developed technical environment where the possibilities of producing high production value productions exists in high definition and with high levels of audio reproduction. We have a director mentor who then sits between what would be the technical producers and the creative writers to really flesh out the performance of actors and start to really build the creative craft of both of those disciplines really early in their experience. So that creative arc moves from for our students from designing technical solutions to performance of their role in a creative way and introducing some of that dance.
That is such a fantastic opportunity for our students, Rowan, to within weeks of arriving in their first year to be able to walk into just a kind of state-of-the-art studio and be guided through the use of that. The old saying, you need 10,000 hours to get really good at what you do. We give them the first 1,500 and then they go on their way. I mean, we always try to emphasise to students, you are not going to walk into the director's chair. You are not going to become the top-level fashion photographer straight up. You've got to think about entry-level opportunities. We have a really strong placement program across all the courses and programs we teach. Work integrated learning, where students, again, get a taste of what it's like to be out there in the real world. And start that journey to become a gopher from my point of view, you get a job as a driver or a gopher on a film crew, and then you possibly become an assistant grip. And the grip, as Rowan said, very arcane job. It's from I think, Rowan, it was grip was the suitcases that they used to carry around, the grips. And then you can become a kind of an assistant and fetch and carry, and then you become a dolly grip, a job I once did reasonably successfully, which was setting up tracks for cameras, pushing those cameras in camera moves. Huge pressure on those people. And as Rowan said, it's a dance. They need to be in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. It's and then, of course, you move on and become a sound record. You're a sound recordist. The boom operator might become the sound recordist. The sound recordist becomes a director, and so on. They work their way through. It's the same for writers, and I'm sure it's the same in so many professions. But we try to be there at the start and give you that initial burst of energy and skill and keep you going.
And something that defines the difference between just the technical and the creative can be as simple as a couple of words. So everybody who's viewing tonight will be familiar with the director calling action. But of course, in practice, we mostly all call and action. And the creativity lies in the first word, not the second. The timing of it, how long we hold that and action. Yeah. And there's a lot of observation going on in the direction of the opening of that scene. There's waiting for technical issues like a car driving by or a plane flying by that will hold that and. But it's an opportunity when you come to a learning environment where it's entirely practical and we're making productions that we can flesh out some of those creative moments that you can't get in any other way, but actually being on set and experiencing that moment.
Yeah.
So just keeping an eye on the time, I might ask one more question, Katrina. I might pitch this at you before we go to just looking if there's any questions in our feed we can respond to, but I'm just wondering, noting that at the risk of missing out one of our areas, we've got a whole range of different programs in our creative industries suite. So I'll just see if I can reel off a few. So furniture design in the city, we've got furniture design, we've got visual arts programs, we've got photography, photo imaging, digital media, gaming, animation, visual effects, a whole range, sound production, a whole range of programs. So Katrina, in terms of what's your best piece of advice for a student in year 10, 11 or 12 who's considering a career in the creative industries? And these are disciplines we're talking about, but also I suppose we're talking about the developing that creative muscle, which could be used in all sorts of areas of work, world of work. What's your advice?
Oh, I think the first thing is to say to anyone who's in year 10, 11 or 12 or their parents is just go for it. Follow your heart. I think, Liam, I was having a look at some of the questions that are starting to come through. So thank you to our audience for sending those. And there's a gorgeous question about how did you find yourself on this pathway and what made you choose your particular area of expertise? And I think, well, I hope that you have found from all of us the passion that we all have for our different disciplines. But if I'm answering that sort of question in terms of giving advice to someone who's just starting out, I just started. I started because I loved making something and I wanted to do something creative. And then all through my working life, and Liam's absolutely correct in the introduction of me. I've worked for, dare I say, probably over 25 years in the industry, and I've moved from one job role to a business to something else as I've evolved in my expertise in the fashion and textiles industry by saying yes. I think it's a key thing with most industries, but certainly with the creative industries, that if you say yes to people, if you are open, if you are great to work with, if you're positive, if you're creative, if you bring this positive energy, which I hope that you see from all of us speaking to you this evening, this willingness to try something, that saying yes to something is because you're going to get offers and you're going to get opportunities, and the opportunities of one thing, it might be a job that lasts for 2 years. I know through my working life, if I was in a job for more than sort of 2 or 3 years, when I was in my 20s, my mum would say, "Isn't it time that you were changing and moving on to something else? And why are you still there?" Which was such a different way of thinking about jobs. And I didn't set out to be in education. I found myself here based on just wanting to give back, and the breadth of my industry experience that makes my teaching and what I can bring to a classroom or to a group of programs relevant. And if you want to be in a creative industry as a young person of 16, 17, 18, or someone who's older who is thinking, I want to change what I'm doing, then just say yes.
Yeah, that's a great point, Katrina. You've just got to be open to those possibilities, don't you?
Yeah.
My dad always wanted me to be a lawyer. He wanted all his kids to be lawyers, and I went to university and I joined the Film Society, and within a year I'd left because I realised this is what I want to do. And I think what Katrina says about being open to those possibilities, to turn seeming negatives into positives, is so important. You make false starts, you decide, this is what I want to do, and 3 years later you're doing something else. Don't be deterred by that. One of the great things about vocational education is you can start later. You can come in as a mature age student, and they're the most successful students of all.
My recommendation for my recommendation for anybody who's in year 10 at the moment, do year 11. Build some endurance. if you're in year 11, keep going to 12. But if you're in year 12, don't be afraid to take a gap year. As John mentions, there is no problem in delaying the inevitable. You will learn skills in every year of your life. So don't be in a desperate hurry to jump out of what you're doing.
Yep.
But Rowan,
necessarily.
don't you also think that even through starting something and in finding it's the wrong path, you
Yes.
still learn something, don't you?
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
You build on every experience, and it leads on to the next experience and the next possibility in whatever you do. It's never lost.
Well, we have a question from Lena, actually, which is in line with what you're talking about there, Katrina. So she's asking have any of you ever regretted your choice or changed what you've wanted to do?
Never regretted it, ever. There have been, to be honest, there have been some jobs that I have regretted at the time, or wondered how on earth I ended up working for someone so awful. But that's the beauty of being able to change and and move on and find better places and work with great people. Don't regret the experience.
Yeah, Lena, I think part of what we try to encourage in vocational education is the fact that you will already have transferable skills that relate to a broad range of industries. So whatever you've done already brings a dimension to what you can bring to your next role. An example of a student who's just come back from 3 weeks of doing a television role for the Olympics. And last year, when they were in pre-production just prior to the Olympics being cancelled, she was working as a production assistant. They needed meetings to be catered, and Sophie went out and is a foodie and catered the meetings. And she really cemented her career through nothing technical, but just her ability to bring other skills from her life and her enthusiasm for food into those meetings. And that stuck with everybody and cemented her a place in her technical role with the Olympics this year. I think all of us who reach anywhere near our vintage who are presenting tonight have done a range of things, and we bring various experience into whatever we're doing. And I think that's the path that you're on now. And part of your role is to not regret too much, but to look for what's positive in it, and see how you can bring things that you've learned, even though you might have learnt them reluctantly. How can you make use of those hard lessons in your next challenge?
Totally agree. I think in a way a creative soul is blind to regret, because they turn even the most dire situations, like those employers that Katrina's had, and I've also had. I'm not talking about anyone at RMIT, of course. You turn those into they're the diamonds you mine to make the next move, to write the next script, to put out the next fashion line, or to decorate a room, or just take into your next job and have that learning and have that insight that's going to benefit you.
Yeah.
Another question that's popped up here, everyone, is one which is pretty common, I suppose, in the area of creativity and where you're interested in a discipline of creativity, which is around the fear of failure and not stepping in because you're worried about failing. And I think one response here would be we actually have a methodology in many of our programs which is about failing fast, and actually failure is really an important component in a learning environment and in a learning process, and it's actually encouraged to. In fact, if you're not failing, there's something wrong in some way. So, what are your thoughts, John? Have you got any thoughts about that problem of the fear of failure and not stepping into things?
From a personal viewpoint, I'm really burnt by times I have failed when I've hit a wall. I haven't delivered a script in time, or I feel I've let someone down, and again, you've just got to use that to drive you on the next time. And, creativity isn't always a joyful experience. Sometimes you write out of anger. You're trying to show someone that this is the way I knew I could do it, and I'm proving it to you right now. Look, I love vocational education because it's about learning competency. It's about knowing how to do a job, and it's not like you're graded on how well you've done the job. It's can you do the job or not? And we make sure that people know how to do the job. They might fail along the way, but they'll be given a chance to prove themselves, to prove their competency, and to move on.
In the realm of television, if there's a moment of black, or the picture doesn't go to air, or the advertiser's ad doesn't make it to air, it costs somebody money. But we've got a fully functioning television studio. We can make productions where if we stop because we've made a mistake, it doesn't matter. It's a place where we've designed in the fact that we're all going to stop and make mistakes. But by practicing through those and learning from each other's mistakes, we start to make it look easy. And experts do things that we can't imagine doing ourselves. They make it look easy because they've mastered a technique. But that's only because, like a skateboarder at the Olympics, they've fallen over every time and got it all wrong before they get there. They only make it to the top because they've actually experienced every crash imaginable. So it's absolutely fundamental to the way we work.
I think, Rowan, even adding to that, it's when you're studying, it's a safe place to fail. Yeah. And is it really failure anyway? It's actually learning, and it's giving you an opportunity to do it better. And it's not really costing money. I mean, it's not costing money to a business. It might take time to redo something, but time is something that as a student you actually have, and that's what you can offer.
You might have. You don't need to come up with one brilliant idea. You need to come up with 100 ideas and find the one that works. And some of them aren't going to work.
Exactly.
By definition, they'll fail.
Exactly.
But you'll get there.
We've got a question here from, I'm not sure, there's no name here, but I would really like to make jewellery and make interested in jewellery design. However, I also want to broaden my field by joining graphic design instead. I'm not sure if both of them are correlated or not, but I'm now confused as to which one I should choose. I suppose, yes, and it's a good point that we do run an incredible graphic design program out of the Brunswick campus, and it's certainly one of our offerings. I think what I would offer the answer to that question would be whatever your gut tells you at any given moment is, and it's not wasted. I know that I think we could all probably reflect that over time, areas of creative discipline are all complementary in the end. And when it all said and done, if you started graphic design, I'm sure that would inform your jewellery making, if that's where you ended up, and vice versa. So,
Liam, there's also that great opportunity to sort of taste different things in that, we do offer the Certificate 4 in Design, which is under sort of the graphics umbrella, and you learn all of those skills. It's 6 months full time. You can do it and then move on and do jewellery if that's what you find that you do. So,
and we're building
I'd say do everything.
Yeah, we're building those pathways, Katrina, where people can start a Certificate 4, move on to a diploma.
That's right.
It's not guaranteed at this point, but we do have some guarantees where if you do the screenwriting program, you are guaranteed entry to bachelor courses at RMIT, and you get the benefit of a year and a half's, study added in. So you can do an advanced diploma or an associate degree, plus go on to a bachelor course within 3.5 years.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
We might have one more time for one more question. This is about placement. So what are the placement programs like in writing, editing and media communications industry? So you've got about 20 seconds each, I would say, and then might be running out of time.
Well, I'll quickly say that the work integrated learning program, the placement program, is key to us. We have a fabulous will advisor, Ash Simmons, who is there to look at all the contracts we draw up so that the person you're doing the placement with is covered. You're covered as a student in every way. It's been tricky with the online learning that we've had to do lately, but hopefully next year we'll get back into people being able to be in the plotting rooms, the festivals, the other venues that we love to be in, and I'm sure that applies to all our programs.
I can jump in and say that we've got deep and close and enduring relationships with the television industry in Melbourne. And even with COVID lockdown last year, we pivoted into a hybrid of virtual production, which the television industry has had to do at the same time. And so, ironically, 2020 has provided more opportunities for students than perhaps we might have found in a normal year to enable people to go forward. So that connection with industry is very strong.
Yeah, work integrated learning is certainly a really core component of what we do across, well, I would say most, if not all, of our programs. Certainly in fashion and textiles and all of the programs out at Brunswick and all the programs at the city campus. So that's actually a really important component to building out graduate ready students who finish up and are work ready and out ready to step out into the world and work creatively out in the world. So on that note, look, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'd like to really thank all the panelists. So once again, we've got Katrina Rose, thank you, John Reeves and Rowan Humphrey. Please, the invitation is if you have any more questions, please send them through to the live chat on the Open Day website.
Liam, can I interrupt? There's just a great question that has just come in, and it's saying, why should I choose to study at RMIT as opposed to competitors? And I hope that we've answered some of it. There are so many choices that we can offer you, and the pathways from one field of study into another, and looking after you as an individual and sharing all of our collective passion for what we do is just one of the best reasons to study at RMIT. I think I know all of us would say our teaching staff are amazing and so connected with industry, and we have the most amazing respect from industry in terms of what we teach and how we prepare our students. So I'd have to say, why wouldn't you study at RMIT?
Liam, there's a saying that teachers are the books that students read most closely, and our teachers, our books are the best. And that's the reason to be at RMIT.
Well, that's
we like to provide you a space to learn into, and there aren't too many spaces that are right on Swanson Street in Melbourne
and the
our
library.
media precinct.
Yeah, so lots of great reasons to study at RMIT and pick up a vocational education program in the creative industries. You'll do well to come here and participate for sure. So thanks again. Thanks to the panel. Been a great conversation. Very much enjoyed by myself, and I hope you've learned something and had some of your questions answered. And on that note, I think we might just wind it up, and I hope you all enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks everyone.